Hello, welcome back. This is episode 28. I am Mo, and
And I'm Sarah.
today I am crocheting a baby blanket that I was going to finish for a baby shower I went to this Sunday, but I didn't finish it, so I bought a bunch of stuff, and I'll just finish this blanket later and give
So,
it to
so
her
you're
at
you're
some point.
making this retroactively for a previous baby
Well,
shower?
see, the baby is not in existence yet. I mean, technically, the baby is sort of in
That
lingo.
that's so fair.
Yeah, so technically it's okay that the baby
They're
blanket
still
is they're still
cooking. You
cooking.
have
I have
time.
time till the end of January. I've got 2 months, but then another friend is having
Oh,
a
that's
baby,
so much
so I've got
time.
to quickly finish this one so I can make another baby blanket for the other for the other baby. Anyways, what's
There's
your
so many
craft?
babies just cooking. I'm doing my nails,
Ooh,
and I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna do white with like a pearlescent color. Actually, if you could help me pick, should I do pink, green, or blue?
green.
Green. You're on your alphabeting.
I do love alphabet. I've always been a green person.
That's
Yeah,
right. Green.
you remember?
You've
I
always been a green person. So you saw Wicked and you're like, finally some
finally, yeah,
representation.
exactly.
There's enough green for me.
I did find at Barnes and Noble this there was this whole table for Wicked, and there was the first three books in the Wizard of Oz series, and like this very nice, you know how Barnes and Noble does the really pretty covers and the really pretty, I forget what it's called. It's the
Mm-hmm.
spray painting they do on the side of the book. It's not spray painted, but you know what I mean. And it's green,
Yeah.
so
They make it look
that
fancy.
was the connection there. It's green.
Mm. Okay. I heard that the book was like fucked up.
I think most books that are pre current publishing era are pretty messed up because that's just I feel like
Okay.
I don't know. Whenever I look at books that are like pre, I want to say 1960, or no, pre, let's say pre 1980s and 1990s, like they're all really weird. They don't follow the rules of genre. They all are just the authors just do whatever they want, and I admire that so
You
much,
did
and I
just
miss
make me
it.
realize that that book must have been written pre-World War II,
Yeah,
since the Wizard of Oz movie came out in 1939. Yeah, I'm now realizing. Yeah,
yeah.
no, that makes sense. That was one of those things for me. Um, so I'll start with something I saw this week. So this is kind of silly, but I learned randomly that you know how like groups of animals have different names.
Yes.
Um, so I found out that a group of rhinos, not rhinos, well them too. I found that a group of hippos is called a bloat, and I was
Oh,
like, that's really random.
a
So then
bloat.
I just looked up and found a bunch of group names, and I have a lot here, and I don't want to go through all of them, but I just want to go through some of my
Okay.
favorites. There's a shrewdness of apes,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was kind of crazy. There were several that are called gangs or troops. There, some of them are very army oriented, which I thought was very funny because I was about to say I don't think they they like implement war tactics, but then I remember we have the term guerrilla
That
warfare,
is true. I mean, they don't do war like we
and I
do,
couldn't
but
explain it to you, but I know it
yeah,
exists. Um, a group of wildcats is called a destruction,
that makes sense. That's every cat.
and and then I saved some for you because I know that you like birds and you know that I hate birds.
I do like
As
birds.
has become sort of a recurring topic on this podcast. Um, a group of emus is called a mob of emus.
That's
So I just
realistic.
thought that we should see that scientifically it is acknowledged that they're dicks.
Australia went to war with emus, right?
My mom went to war with an emu.
That sounds like your mom.
she was she was talking about there was one time she was driving home and there was just like an emu in the middle of the road and she stopped and it tried to attack her car.
Like,
That's the audacity that we need to find. Like it stood there and like pecked at, or like it, and you know what? I think it just bucked at her, which is crazy for emus to do. And she was just like, get out of the way, and it wouldn't move, and it just like made eye contact. Like they know what they're
yeah,
doing. So I have a few other bird ones for you. A paddling of ducks. That one's cute. I like that one.
that is very cute.
Um, a a convocation of eagles.
Oh, I like that. Word of the day.
Word of the day, convocation, and then a flamboyance of
Yeah,
flamingos.
that's
That one
appropriate.
was there was a gay involved in that one.
Or that's where the gays got flamboyance from. They saw those flamingos and they were like,
Perhaps. Oh,
we gotta
that's like
be
a
like
chicken and
them.
the egg. Which came first, the flamboyance of flamingos, or queens in in the East Village?
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna. Oh, there's a conspiracy of lemurs, which is suspicious. A tower of
Oh, that
giraffes.
makes sense.
Oh, this one was one of my favorites. A parliament of owls.
I do like that.
That's so good.
That's very good.
I want to I really wish. Now I'm just picturing like a group of people with those dusty ass, powdery ass wigs that like they wear in the UK too, and that's like you and your homies like dressed like that with your like Hamilton fit on.
Oh, yes.
You guys would be like a parliament.
Yeah. To me, it sounds like a children's book that like everyone remembers only vaguely. Like,
Oh.
don't you remember there was that book? It was called The Parliament of Owls, and there was like this whole storyline about passing a bill, but like then the Hawks came in. I don't
Oh, that's so good because that's. I mean, what's that one cat series
Warrior
that everyone
Cats.
says they read?
Yeah, that was like the one book series I didn't
What are they
read.
called?
Warrior Cats, something like that.
Oh, thank God. I didn't read that one either. So I was afraid that we were about to have that. But I read like the Ragweed series. I don't know. It wasn't about Ragweed. He was just like a mouse in it.
Yeah, the Redwall series. That was about a mouse, right?
Redwall. That was it. Redwall.
I didn't read that one
That
either.
was a good book. I know there was allegories for something in there because there was a super cruel rat in it. And he was like a war leader.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It wasn't quite oh, that the famous George Orwell book with the pig.
Animal Farm.
It wasn't quite Animal Farm, but it was a lot like it. Um yeah, and then there's a Mischief of Rats. I like this. And then a Crash of Rhinos.
Ooh.
But all this kind of got me thinking of like I wish we had fun names like that for like groups of people.
Mm,
And so I was like, well, what if we had like a group of politicians would be called like
a waste of time.
not a hypocrisy. Not us both going in. I had a oh, I didn't write it down. You had to believe me it was good.
I believe you.
But like
I'm
you
psychically
could do a
sensing it.
hypocrisy, an irony. I don't know, and I feel like a group of lesbians should be called a legion.
Yeah, that makes sense.
No, I'm sorry, a legacy. A legacy would be better. That just feels like much more long-standing and intense.
A group of celebrities can be a glamour of celebrities.
That's so good.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh my God, I like that. A paradox. That's what it was. A paradox of politicians.
Ooh, I love that.
That's what I wanted to call them. I think. Oh, there's a lamentation of swans.
That's good.
That's a little crazy.
I thought I remembered reading once that weren't most of these animal group names, didn't they come from one guy who just wrote a whole book or a section of the book and was like,
It has to
this
be.
is all the animal group names. I have decided it now. This is the facts as I have written them.
And you know what? I would do it too. If I worked in a field where I was discovering things, I would make I would be so insufferable. I would be like, you're gonna remember me,
Same.
you're gonna laugh with me, you're gonna be on my side, and here's what I think. And that's why, there's a venue of vultures. All I was gonna say is my favorite thing about this list is that some of them have alliteration, like a shiver of sharks.
Yeah.
Or like a stench of skunks, and then some of them don't. So I just really love how it's cute, but it's also kind of indecisive.
I do love that. 'Cause
I kind of
that's-
wish that they committed.
You what?
I kind of wish that they committed.
Yeah, same. But also, like, I relate. If I had started that project and was like, we're going to do a shiver of skunks, and then, like, I would have run out of ideas and been like, you know what? It doesn't matter. It's fine. Who's going to care? but we care.
That's, you know what? This is very relatable because it's almost like starting a poem and then you dictate like I want to rhyme with this word and then it just doesn't happen.
That's so relatable. Yeah. That's every time.
As this is so embarrassing. Every like few months, I'm like, actually, I'm a really good writer, and I'm gonna try to write poetry, and I write the most embarrassing shit, and I delete it.
Yeah. Every once in a long, long while, I will attempt poetry. And then I go,
Yeah.
okay, back to not doing that.
Every time I'm like, you know what? There's other people who do
Mm-hmm.
this, so that you don't have to, and those are the real essential
That's
workers.
me every time I see a cross stitch pattern because I tried cross stitch once, and then I said never again.
Oh.
So every time I look at it on Instagram, I'm like, that is so pretty, and that is also not a craft for me, and that's okay.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I don't understand what it does.
Yeah.
Like I get it if like one of my friends, she like I guess it's cross stitching, but she like embroidered overalls that she was wearing.
So cross
So she
stitching
like embroidered
is like you're specifically like crossing the stitches in like this
okay.
specific pattern. I don't know how to describe it
Cuz
without
I've seen
giving
them.
like a visual.
I've I've seen them, but I've only seen it like on like those scrap of fabrics that you do.
Yeah.
And then you just like hang it up, I guess. And it's
Yeah.
pretty. I mean, I guess that applies to pretty much every hobby that I have. It's like, but what does it do?
Well, I'm making
I
a
don't have to
baby
do
blanket,
anything.
which will keep the baby
You are
warm
making a baby
once, and then
blanket.
they'll put it in a bag of baby blankets that
The
everyone had
baby?
made for the baby.
Oh.
Because that's when I told my mom I'm making a baby blanket, she was like, "Oh, I have all of your baby blankets that everyone made for you when you were a baby." And she pulled them out.
Wait.
There are so
When,
many baby blankets.
when you said, but then they'll put it in a bag, I thought that you couldn't find the word for like the sling that they put babies in. And I
What
was
a
like, I don't think it's called a
baby.
bag.
Could
That's
you
why I said not the
imagine?
baby. Honestly, just like carrying a baby in a Trader Joe's tote bag that
OMG.
they're like all burritoed up in.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You know,
That's like
post-apocalyptic
a
baby.
trend in LA or something. Oh.
Mad
You
Max
said
Fury
post-apocalyptic and
bottle.
I said I bet this is a trend in LA.
You went to LA, I went to Dystopia. This is East Coast versus West Coast thinking.
Mhm. I hate to do this, but could you pronounce that word one more time?
East Coast, West Coast?
No, the place that you went to versus the place that I went to.
Dystopia versus, what did you say? LA?
I said LA, but yeah, I thought it was dystopia.
Dystopia? Dystopia? Dystopia
Is it
would be fun.
dystopia or because it is spelled like Dyson.
Listen, I used to pronounce democracy democracy, and I went through an entire debate round saying democracy, and then my opponent
Oh
had to take me
no.
aside at the end and be like, hey, it's pronounced democracy.
Oh
I
no.
just mispronounce things
I
all the
feel
time.
very responsible. I feel so responsible for that memory for you because my parents led that whole speech and debate
They
league.
should have told me how to pronounce democracy.
So I would like to apologize that you had that
To be
experience.
fair, they did warn me that I was mispronouncing obligatory wrong, and I was saying obligatory.
I didn't recognize the first way you said
Okay,
that,
ob
but that is correct.
obligatory?
I
Obli
haven't heard someone say it out loud in so long. But I always on words like that I always need a run up, so I always need to say it like two
hmm
times. And then sometimes I stutter and get stuck.
Oh, yeah, yeah, me too.
And then I just sit there and I'm like, well, you guys know what I meant, so.
Exactly. As long as they know. Oh, I found out recently that righteous is not pronounced righteous. So that was my
Okay.
recent discovery.
That's a win
Yeah,
for you. I love that for you.
yeah, yeah. I learned a thing.
And I love that you're learning, because
Same.
I think that's the point of life, is to never stop
And
learning.
we're learning together here on this podcast, and that's how I'm tying it back in and getting us back on track.
That's I appreciate that. So that was just one thing that interested me this week. What's something that has caught your attention?
So I go to this book club once a month, and this month we read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. And I'm going to be honest, like, we voted on this book this time. Usually the host just decides, but this time, and I voted for a different book, so I wasn't super, excited for this book. But Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, very good, very excellent. The
Okay.
the main gist of the story is that it's kind of a fantasy historical fiction. This woman, Emily Wilde, she's a very good academic. She's not good with people, but her field of study is fairies, because in
Okay.
this world, the fae, the folk, all of that is real, and so
Mm-hmm.
she studies them, and it's like this whole field of study at Oxford, I want to say, or Cambridge, Oxford, I think. It doesn't matter. Fancy England school. And she goes on this expedition to do a study, to research in some faraway, cold, wintry place. And while she's there, one of her colleagues, who she has like a one, like it's not really enemies to lovers. She hates him. He isn't under the impression clearly that they are friends. And like she like enjoys his company enough that she's not like immediately kicking him out of the house when he arrives, but he also arrives with two research students who can like do all the work. Anyways, the story is about fairies and fairy tales. And what I really liked about this book is that it really incorporated a lot of like the nature of those original fairy tales from long before Disney, and all the ways we've kind of made fairy tales into this very modern good versus evil story, because a lot of those old fairy
Mm-hmm.
tales were, number one, like oral traditions that were passed down, told around fireplaces for hundreds of years, and really shaped by the communities that were telling them and their experiences. And a lot of those stories revolved around regular everyday people, the miller, the fisherman, etc. And like the resolution is usually like they win by using their cleverness or their wits, or sometimes it's not really about triumphing over the other party, it's just about surviving. And I really enjoy that in old stories, in old folklore, because like today it feels like every single story has to be about good versus evil and physically overpowering someone. So I really enjoyed that the
Mm-hmm.
Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, like went back to that old way of telling stories, and in like kind of wrapping in with its theme of fairy tales. Um, I'm losing my train of thought.
You know what I call that though? That sounds like the Marvelification
I was about to talk about Marvel,
of
yeah,
like fairy tales. Oh, go for it, go for it.
because like
Talk your shit.
so this thought originated from, I want to give credit where it's due, Pop Culture Detective. He has a YouTube channel that's really good, but also before Twitter went the way of the X, he had a really good
Of
Twitter thread
course.
on Marvel and how so much of Marvel is around physically overpowering people. It's okay to have power if you like. So many of the stories revolve around it's not wrong for someone to have power, it's wrong for this particular person to have power. And like the power is absolute and all
Mm.
encompassing. And if someone is standing up to a government agency or some other entity having all the power, they are wrong, because having power is not bad. It's just if you're using all the power in the wrong way. And the way you
Right.
like overcome that is by physically overpowering them. And I'm so sick of it. I'm so incredibly sick of it. And like this doesn't originate with Marvel, obviously, but I feel like I don't know, when I look back on all the blockbusters and all the big stories that have gotten so popular since like even back in like I don't know, Harry Potter did that too, where it was like I know they did a lot of and obviously Harry Potter is bad, J.K. Rowling is bad, but even Harry Potter ends with like, oh, they have a big wand fight, and then Harry's wand magic power is stronger
Yeah,
than
he becomes a
Voldemort's.
cop too at the end.
Yeah, so I'm just like,
So it's just like the power transfers to like a different institution.
yeah. So those were my that was my thought on fairies, fairy tales, encyclopedia, and Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Yeah, what are your thoughts on all that?
So first of all, I did see that one was like ranked in my library, so it's actually like on my reading
Ooh,
list. So I'm glad to hear that that was a good book. I very much agree with that. It's really funny because that actually ties a little bit into my second topic that I'll get into later. Where it's just like I feel like some of it, well, maybe some of it comes from like Disney princesses, where like some of it got like dumbed down for younger audiences, um, in terms of like good versus evil and those kinds of battles. And then that's sort of the direction that a lot of widespread mainstream sort of fantasy took. And oh, that's so interesting because now I'm thinking about like my favorite Pixar movies and such, and like it's so funny because with A Bug's Life, that one had like undertones of like not like class consciousness, but like the idea that these bigger bugs were in charge and that the ants didn't realize that they outnumbered essentially like the workers outnumbered the bosses. And it's really interesting too with that because I mean that's a kids movie, but I do feel like there's a loss of some of those themes that's happened recently,
mm-hmm,
where
definitely.
it is very much like this whole thing of there's good, there's evil, it's black and white, and you can only there's a physical overpowering that happens within specific like acceptable circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Every villain has to have a sad
And if you
backstory to justify their villainy.
but it's also but it doesn't justify
Yeah.
like I feel like even going back to Marvel, like there were like two villains that to a point had a point, and that was the guy from Civil War. He was a neo-Nazi,
Yeah.
so that was like weird. But his backstory of what happened to his wife, and I still to this day think that like I think Killmonger was one of the best that we've seen pulled
Mm-hmm.
off. Of like he had a backstory where you could be like, okay, no, I get it, and I kind of want to help you a little bit, but then not really.
Yeah.
And that one was very good and genuinely had nuance. Cause then like with fairy tales, I feel like because that's the thing is that they can't really like I guess not to be like so Disney focused, but it just kind of reminds me of Sleeping Beauty and how the Maleficent film came out, and that was a really unique one where I felt like it did add to the story and it did give new perspective and it did give like nuance to who she was.
My perspective on
I don't
Disney is that like those very early Disney films like Snow White and Sleeping Beauty have to be like looked at alongside like Fantasia because a lot of like what was supposed to be what those the prominence of those movies, at least from what I understand, is that you were really looking at the beauty of the animation because like even in like I do love Sleeping Beauty
right.
because like I just it's such a beautiful film. The animation and the art is
It
so
is.
gorgeous. And like there are scenes where I'm like, what's the point of this in the plot? But then I have to remember, oh, this is just showing like look at the amazing animation they can do. This is cutting edge animation from the
Right.
time. And the,
I will say though, Maleficent was kind of reasonable in that too.
she didn't get her
Like, because
invitation.
the whole thing, she didn't get her invitation, and in the original story, I think it got lost in the mail, but she gave them an opportunity to correct it,
Hmm.
and they didn't.
Hmm.
So I will say in the original, that was cool. But I don't know, because the concept of an anti-hero I feel has gotten really lost, and it's not the same, but I feel like it's gotten very lost in like the Deadpool of it
I'm
all,
so sick
where
of
now there's
Deadpool.
like a specific idea. I think everybody is
I
at this
tried watching
point.
that stupid movie
Um,
and I was just like, shut up, you stupid man with your stupid
you should
references.
see there's an this like recent batch of actors on actors. They put Ryan Reynolds with Andrew Garfield,
Mm,
and everyone kept sharing this one clip where Ryan Reynolds goes, "It was actually very hard to write dialogue for Wolverine." And I know he didn't mean it this way because he seems like a genuinely sweet guy, but Andrew Garfield went, "Oh, really?"
Andrew Garfield's over here like, are you serious? Doing
Yeah,
the job?
and then also like I also feel like there's a whole discrepancy too between like the American point of view and the British point of view, because a lot of their actors and writers kind of they it's like expected that they have a Shakespearean
Mm-hmm.
background. So I do feel like they have like a very different basis for how they view those things, and we don't have that here.
100%.
Um, right, but I guess like tying that back into the fairy tales, I think that that's why shows like What We Do in the Shadows is like so
Mm.
effective, is because it they say like there's these traditional very like sometimes these fairy tales or these legends are very strange, and we don't understand like why someone wrote it this way, but we're going to lean really hard into it, and we're going to make that like that's the bit, is that we're going back to this like weird time.
I do agree. Yeah, what we do in the shadows definitely does feel reflective of like those old folklore stories that like there isn't a point, there isn't a moral fable, at the end. It's just there's some weird shit that happened and now we go home.
Yeah, because that was like the whole thing with like Dracula and like all these things, or even like okay, Frankenstein. I think Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is like a really great
Hmm.
story, and one of my favorite things about it is that like given the time that it happened and like where technology and development was at the time, like in this world this crazy shit happened and no one would fucking know because it happened on like some like remote area.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, I think that's where What We Do in the Shadows does it really well, this idea of, this shit happens and it's weird, but it's just kind of every day because they just live among us and that's just what they
Yeah.
do. And I like that world where, I mean, and then also some of it feels real in that sense, where it just kind of like these things just happen, and that's just what life is these things happen, and we don't see it a lot of the time unless we're like privy to it or whatever.
Which is like very into the
So
tradition of
I like
like
that
the old
aspect.
stories of like the good folk of the hill or the fae.
Yeah, because then it does like there you get into like justified, you know, because I'm sure that there's all kinds of like just like fairy etiquette,
Oh yeah.
right? I've heard that in like I don't know. I've heard that in like D&D campaigns. There's a really specific way that like fae like their customs are supposed to be foreign so you can offend them really easily. So that's where the whole like Maleficent thing is really interesting, because she was like the one witch or one fae, I don't know if she was technically a witch, who like didn't have a formal seat at the table. And I do think that that's like disrespectful throughout culture,
Hmm.
to just be like, we just don't like you, so like you don't get a place to sit and you don't get to hang out with us.
It does feel very in line with the Greek tale of Eris, who like the goddess of discord didn't get invited to this big fancy wedding, so then she showed up and like offered up the golden apple and the three goddesses fought over it, and then finally Paris was promised Helen of Troy, and that's how we get the Trojan War, and it all started because they didn't invite Eris to the wedding.
It's just like, because that is like every day, like, because people are finicky like that. Like, someone's like, well, why didn't you invite me to the baby shower? It's like, oh, I thought you weren't going to go. Well, you should have invited me anyway. And I'm a proponent of invite anyway.
Yeah,
But
same.
I
Even
also
if
acknowledge that can be a bit finicky at times.
hmm
So I love that there's still like fantasy fairy tales being like unique ones being written right now that have some of that old like twist to it where it's like because that is what fantasy is you're stepping into a new world with a new set of rules that feel foreign to you,
That's what it
and
should
then
be. Yeah.
that's what
Instead
it
of
should be, and then it is
generic
sort of
ye old
like
England.
right, and then it is like what's right, what's wrong, because you wouldn't know because you're just stepping into it. So how can you walk into a foreign area, like go somewhere you've never been, where there's people you've never seen before, creatures you've never seen before, maybe there's magic, and then you come in with your like really specific worldview, and then you're saying what's right and wrong. That doesn't always like, I guess it's that like shift in perspective where if you
Yeah.
were to think about it from someone other than like Captain America's point of view, you might
Yeah.
understand why this is the way it is. And I like that about fairy tales because I feel like that's a really great tool for shift in perspective because it's like a fun place where you can like picture yourself and think about like like Alice walking along these like giant mushrooms where it's just that childhood like childlike sense of awe that it inspires.
100%. Yeah, that curiosity that anything is possible that like
That's
is
exactly the
in so
word
many old
that I would
stories, but
use, like
now, like you said,
curiosity.
it kind of is just reserved for children's stories.
And I feel like bitches aren't curious anymore.
Yeah, agreed. It's really annoying.
And we
People
just
just believe
it's so
anything.
annoying. It's like they believe anything and then they don't think like why would this person say that? Or like
Yeah.
why would you see I do like goofing on Europeans who come to America
Oh, yeah.
and their minds are blown by the concept of like ice, right? But like
Or
it
like
is kind of
how
funny.
big. The one that I hear a lot is like so many people, particular from like these smaller countries, do not understand. You cannot see everything that is in the United States within like a week. That is
Oh
several plane
yeah.
trips or like a month-long car road trip. That is
Mhm.
everything is just so far apart. Is the thing that I've heard is hard
Yeah.
for Europeans to understand.
Because and I think a lot of that is just the way that we refer to it where like we have states but really they're the size of countries.
Yeah.
But I know like Australia is also massive, but
Yeah.
whatever, that's okay. Y'all can continue to not understand, but there is like an aspect of like if I were and that's like simply I mean, I've never been to Europe, but I know there's a lot of Americans who haven't. But the concept of like going to Europe and also being like, oh well, like shops are smaller, apartments are smaller, like in Italy, because most people go to the store every day, and then
Mhm.
that's just not custom here. And like that's a really simple way of shifting perspective. So I feel like it might just be a storytelling tool as well, of having something like, it's not quite as intense as Tolkien writing like a whole language, but it's still like there's a new set of rules for you to consider. So it does like force you to consider like that's interesting that this world would
Nope, I fixed it.
react would
Okay.
be this way.
I had to pause to cough and then I didn't know how to unpause.
I don't know how to either, and that's okay. That
You have to hit the pause button again.
uh, you'd think at 28 episodes in I would know this.
Yeah, it's really strange we haven't had to cough before now.
I know. Well, we are like deeper into flu season now,
Yeah.
so I think
And
that
unlike other episodes, I am coming to you from a closet this time. So, yeah, so as I was saying, unlike other episodes, I'm now in a closet because I thought I've heard other podcasters say the audio quality is better. So that might also be why I'm suddenly now coughing.
right because you're sitting in a closet where there's probably a lot of dust around you.
That is so true. I need to vacuum this apartment and I keep putting it off.
Listen, me too. It's okay. Vacuuming is hard. And
It's just a lot.
yeah. And to be fair, like how often do you vacuum your closet?
Oh, that's such a great question because I had to take a whole lot of junk out of here to fit in. So
This is a lot of effort to set yourself back like that.
listen, listen, it'll be worth it.
It'll be worth it. Oh, that's so funny.
Our listeners are going to be like, wow, Mo's audio quality really has improved on
Yeah.
episode 29.
Yeah. It's just funny because I never saw anybody complaining about it. And I mean, I guess it shows initiative on your end that no one complained, but you were still like, I'm going to do what I need to do for the people. And I'm going to clean out, I'm going to take some items out of my closet so I can sit in it and record.
You see, that's the thing is I haven't fully cleaned it, so I'm sharing the space with a whole bunch of gift
That's
bags
why
that
I
I'm like, we
stopped and
could
I was going to
repurpose
say
this.
I cleaned it out. And I was like, no, they just removed items.
You know me so well.
Yeah.
I'm short. There's a lot of I don't need a lot of space.
And you know
It's
what?
just me,
That's
this
okay.
laptop, this microphone, my crocheting, and this lamp right behind me.
Oh, wait, that sounds moody.
Yeah, I
This is
got
like
it's not it is a ring light. It is not very moody. I have it plugged into the computer.
what's okay, never mind. That's not at all what I was picturing. I was thinking of what was that show with that guy from Star Trek?
Pardon?
Never mind.
Reading
This
Rainbow?
no. The other guy from Star Trek, the white dude with like the dark hair and
There are
he would
so many guys. Leonard
okay,
Nimoy?
no, so he would tell like
Data?
stories and like they
This
would
sounds like Reading Rainbow.
show scenarios and then you like guess what happens or like you wait to find out what happens and they're like could be I
Oh,
forget what it's called.
I know the guy who always would get into chairs weird. That one.
Was that it where it was like some of the stories were true and some of them weren't? And he would
I know what you're talking about. He's a white man with like brunette hair. He was on Star Trek Next
yes.
Generation. He gets into chairs
Yes.
weird.
That's a really interesting. I think I would cry if somebody said that about me.
Listen, on the off chance he is listening to our podcast and has gotten to episode 29 and is like, I can't believe they said that about me. I will personally apologize in person. Okay? I am
It
so
was called
sorry,
something or
actor whose
fiction.
name I don't know.
Beyond, it's called Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction. And it
Yes.
has. Is that it? Is it Jonathan Frakes?
That sounds like his name. Sure.
It was called Fact or Fiction. Did it come back? Wait. It came back in 2022.
Good for you, Jonathan.
They brought Jonathan Frakes back. Wait. Yeah, the production quality is so
Love
up.
that for you.
Oh my god, I just saw
Jonathan,
the
if you're
trailer on
listening to this.
IMDb and it says the hold on, hold on, hold on. The
Okay.
IMDb
Okay.
trailer for this is crazy. Why would you market it? I'm not listening with sound, but I'm waiting. There was a card. It says so they show the old Beyond Belief Fact or Fiction. The cult classic meme phenomenon returns. They need to stop. They need to stop thinking that they can like use the internet to market. Because you
Yeah.
can't just have a show and call it the meme phenomenon. That's
Oh,
crazy.
there's a pun in there. Meme phenomenon.
The phen-
Phenomenon.
Oh, I can't get there because I feel like the meme would be in the phenomenon, so it'd be phenomenon,
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
but nobody would be able to pronounce it. So is it good?
I mean, you just did.
I had to sound it out like hooked on phonics style. That I did get there. It just like it wouldn't be easy to say, but yeah, I think about the poor guy who had to edit that in like Adobe Premiere, who had to type in the words meme phenomenon.
Good for him. He got paid at least.
But yeah, we got very very far off track from distracted by talking about the closet from your original fairy tales.
Sounds like a fairy tale. Once upon a time, there was a podcaster. They went into their oh wait, because that's Narnia, because it's the wardrobe. Anyways, back on track.
Oh yeah, Narnia.
Which clues us back into
I
fairy tales, because C.S. Lewis said it was
Yes,
going
it
to be a fairy
does.
tale. Yippee ki
But it
yay!
was just an allegory for
That
Jesus.
is also what it was, very much so. And also a way for him to
Yeah.
anger his friend, to not anger, but and the way
Try
you
to convert his friend.
no, he was like he and J.R.R. Tolkien had like a whole thing where like they both had different
Oh, that's
opinions on
right.
fantasy, so like they would put things in their story to like annoy the other one or something.
That's so cute.
That is so that's the true meaning of friendship. I
It really is.
yeah.
Because I would make fun of you in a book if I could. Like,
Yeah.
just a little way. Not even make fun of you, but just have, like I'd write about, like, a grandfather who would,
Oh
like,
my
put his
God.
rocking chair in the
That is
closet.
so oh my God. That is so me. That when we eventually have merch, that will be the
Oh,
merch.
that would be so
It'll be a
good.
rocking chair in a
Yeah.
closet and it'll say episode 29. Anyways,
Oh my god.
I don't have a way to segue. What's your next bullet point?
I do. I have a way to segue. What you're talking about here reminds me a lot of a phenomenon I've been seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll admit it, okay. Sometimes I listen to people read those Reddit stories when I'm running errands.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is and I won't just say people on Reddit because I've noticed there's people in these comment sections too.
Yeah.
They have very strong opinions.
Oh, they do.
And they have very strong opinions about people who don't carry the same opinions as them. So like there's one of these that I listen to where they discuss it. And so each person comes from like a different, like sometimes they vary in age, so they have like different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that if people don't have what they think is the correct perspective, they're really intense about it. And one of the things that like really struck me about this was those same people had one of those videos where like, you know, those like Jubilee videos or cut videos where they say like a statement and then people stand to one side of the room if they agree with it
Oh,
and one if
yeah.
they disagree. They did one of those, and there was one, and I'm actually really interested in your thoughts on the exact question, because they said, I would remain friends with my friend if I found out that they were a cheater.
Ooh. Hmm. Hmm. Depends on the
And it
friend.
was so interesting because only two people went to the side of I would dump a friend. And everybody else went to the other side, and it was interesting because they said like it really depends on, for me, like the situation, like do
Yeah.
I know the other person that they cheated on? Are they a serial cheater? Was it a one-time thing? What's going on in their life? How close are we as friends?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that specifically?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's a very because okay, let's say I had a friend named Billy Bob, and Billy Bob and I have been friends since we were in kindergarten. Okay, I've known Billy Bob my whole life. He knows all of my deep, dark secrets. I know all of his deep, dark secrets. We've been with each other through thick and thin. He comes to me and he says, Mo, I really messed up. I cheated. And like, I don't think I would dump that friend because like this is someone I've known for forever. Like I would tell him to his face, that was a terrible thing to do. How could you? What is wrong with you? You need to shape up, you know. But also, like, I don't think I would
Shape
end the
up, Billy
friendship.
Bob.
But also, if I have a friend who, like, let's say I made a friend at, like, book club named Silly Bob. And Silly Bob and I just hung out a couple of times.
I really
And
appreciate that they have to have names. Because I do think they have to have names.
so Silly Bob and I only hung out, like, a couple of times. And he was like, yeah, I cheated one time. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I would just, like, quietly fade out of that friendship. I would just, like, forget to text him, and that would be it.
So let me throw another scenario at you.
Okay.
We've known each other for a very long time.
We have.
So let's say that, like, I think I'm messy in my dating life, but I'm absolutely not at the I'm going to cheat on people stage. And I kind of don't comprehend how you get there.
Yeah, me
But let's
neither.
say, like, whatever, I'm being very messy
Okay.
and you start to notice that I've been like habitually cheating on people.
And I'm gonna be like, Sarah, we gotta talk about these
Yeah.
decisions you are making in your life and why they're
Okay.
wrong.
Fair. And that's
I
what I would hope a
can't,
good friend would do.
yeah, I can't imagine any situation where like I would end our friendship. Like, I don't know, you'd have to murder a
No,
child. And
I
even
kind of
then,
think now that we're in our mid 20s, I think we
yeah,
passed the stage where you would lose a friend
yeah,
you've
I don't
known
know.
for that long.
I don't know how to tell you this, Sarah. I'm not in my mid-20s anymore. I'm gonna be 29.
Okay. Now that what okay, let me rephrase. Now that we're past our like early 20s, now
Yeah,
that we're
yeah, yeah.
entering the like cuz I'm like I'm going to be 27 next year. So I'll also be in the late 20s club.
Mm-hmm.
And not really that bothered by age so much anymore. But it's very interesting cuz I had a friend in college who I'd known for like 8 months who came to me and did tell me that they cheated on their boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And my immediate response was to comfort them
Oh,
because they were
okay.
very
Yeah.
like distressed and distraught. But I will say the reason why I did that wasn't because she mentioned it super like casually in conversation. She was crying, she was freaking
Yeah.
out, and she did the right thing and went to her boyfriend at the time and told him and broke it off.
Mm-hmm.
Like that night. Like she cheated on him and the next day was like, we need to talk. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's sort of the only, and also she was like 18, 19. Like we were really
Yeah,
early in
that's
college.
young.
So
That's a
that
baby.
stage, like, that's a difficult time. So I feel like that's sort of the age where you start making those mistakes. So now that we're like past that, I think if something was going to happen, knock on wood,
Knock
it
on
would have
wood.
already happened. Um, but also, like, I don't know. You're really good at talking about your problems, and I'm trying to be good at talking about my problems. So I feel like this wouldn't happen for us, but like, it was just an interesting conversation because I will say, I think people who cheat a lot, that tends to be a symptom of other issues because really what
Yeah.
that is like selfishness and
Oh
instant
yeah.
gratification. And if
Mm-hmm.
someone's going to do that to like their partner and like that's the person who's supposed to be like with them to the end, it's more of a symptom of bigger issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm with you where I don't know that I could really see myself just
I agree.
instantly being like, well,
100%.
you cheated, we're not friends anymore. All of the comments of that video where I initially saw this like scenario, all of the comments said the only two people they would trust were the two people who went to the side if they would dump a friend.
Because like they're all
And
imagining themselves as the person getting cheated on. They're not imagining themselves as the friend or the person cheating. Like that's the thing with like YouTube, Reddit stories like that. People always imagine themselves in the victim's place and no one else's.
it was also like, I guess to like tell on myself a little bit, it was like this, I don't know if you're familiar with the new Smosh channel where they have like a cast of like comedians and stuff. So it's like people you would watch their content regularly. So I also think there was a very parasocial element to it where people were talking about how disappointed they were in certain people for not saying they would instantly. And there was one person where he like stated some of his friends are like cheaters. And
Mm.
I understand being like about that. However, he was a straight man, and I have noticed that the straight man circles are very strange
Oh yeah,
with some
100%.
of
Straight men
that,
have
where
like a
some of
whole
them,
yeah.
yeah. So like for me, I'm a little bit like I'm not even gonna touch that one.
Mm-hmm.
But it got me thinking about like these parasocials, and it is something I've noticed online where people are very intense and incapable of considering multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
And I've seen like there's always discourse online. So I like this was the little bit of research that I did was I was like searching and trying to find like I ended up seeing some like op-eds about like nuance is dead online, and then through that I stumbled upon something that was very interesting. So like this is called this document I found is from 1997. It was written by a man named John Perry Barlow. It's called The Declaration of Independence of Cyberspace.
Mm.
And this whole document was like written It was to combat a law that was about to be passed at the time. It's like very anti-internet regulation.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna read a few excerpts from this because I have a thought about this man.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these like kind of were interesting thoughts. Like one of the things he says is like, you're terrified of your own children, says they are natives in a world where you will always be immigrants. There's a lot of
Ooh.
talk of colonization in this, which I think is interesting. He also says, in our world, whatever the human mind may create can be reproduced and distributed infinitely at no cost. The global conveyance of thought no longer requires your factories to accomplish, which I thought was, I just, it's really interesting seeing this perspective now, knowing what the internet has grown to be over the past like 20 plus years, I guess. Well, no, is it? 20 plus years, yeah, 97, because we're, yeah. So like it's interesting that he really thought like this is an incredible place of like manufacturing ideas. And he goes, we will create a civilization of the mind in cyberspace. May it be more humane and fair than the world your governments have made before. And that was how he ended it. And it was like nestled in this big conversation about like the social contract that people online were going to create, which I thought was very interesting. And it sort of got me thinking about, like, of course I have to bring, you know, architecture into it. There's medieval cities who they were not designed with like an urban planner. So like think of cities like, do you know Bruges or Brussels?
I know of
was
it.
thinking about that movie. Yeah, so like the way it's designed is so interesting because it's this thing that happens when you have like this huge boom in building, but they don't map out the streets. And like you can see it in certain cities, like Portland's one where you can see it. I think Philly's similar too. Like New York's a very specific city where everything's laid out in grids, and Portland's kind of a grid too, but it's very wide because it wasn't supposed to be like a big city center, whereas New York was going to be this big city, so all the streets are mapped out in like a grid.
Yeah.
And so that was very intentional. But with cities like Brussels, they had this big boom in like medieval times, whatever that era is. And so they grow in these clusters and it looks very organic while having these like really beautiful architecture. So I was thinking about the way that the internet has done that, where it's sort of, there was no plan for it. They didn't map it out.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of been this really unregulated thing that's just grown, and it has like certain areas that are like growing on its own and others that are popping up. And something that he talked about in this like weird Declaration of Independence was this idea of like, you hate that we have this cyberspace where you can't reach us because it's not physical. Like you cannot arrest our thoughts. This is a place where we can go and you can't like come get us. And that's why I feel like we're starting to get to this place where people aren't considering that they're speaking to other like physical humans, because this is the unregulated mental like thought space. This is like our mind, the meaning of the mind, so to speak. And you can't physically get to another person, because I think if some of those people that, you know, I talked about in the comments, I think if some of their friends came to them and brought this dilemma to them, I don't think they'd take as harsh of a stance.
No,
I
they
think that
wouldn't.
there's some situations in our lives where it is okay to be like, I have to draw a line with you and we can't do this anymore. And I can't talk to you while you're like engaging in this behavior. But there's a lot of other ones where you kind of just have to resign yourself to being like, people are human and they're going to make mistakes. Because when I think about myself and some of the mistakes I make, I think it would be frustrating for one of my friends to see some of those patterns that I know that I have and to watch me do it over and over again and still be there. But like, we do that for each other. So it's just like, first of all, I just have to say this man, John Perry Barlow, does sound like the first ever Redditor to me. Some of the things he was saying, it felt very Reddit pilled. But I do think that was very interesting, this thought that there's this cyberspace that's this thing that you can't physically touch, where people can't get to you and they can't like restrict what you say or what you think. And so I think that that's when it starts to become this different animal of, you know, it's like how some people, to them, texting is so intimate they wouldn't want anyone, well, I wouldn't want anyone else to read my texts, where it's very close to becoming like your thoughts and it feels like someone's
Yeah.
reading your mind.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like that article is so interesting, and I love the metaphor about the comparison to medieval cities. And it's interesting how like much the internet has changed because it is so corporatized now and censored, and there is so much regulation now. And but yeah, it does feel like people still. It feels like people taking things personally on the internet that has nothing to do with them has been around for forever. I feel like that's just a nuance of human nature of whenever you hear a story, you will always put yourself in whoever is seen as like the protagonist of the story. And in a cheating story, inevitably, like we always present cheating stories from the perspective of the person being cheated on. So inevitably, people are always
But
going to
do
see
we?
themselves. Well,
Because and that's where I was thinking about that guy in that video who said he has friends who cheat. Because that was something I found out when I had a few frat bro friends in college. That wasn't that weird to them.
yeah, but
And when
I'm
they
talking about
tell
like in
their
fictional
friends about
stories.
it, oh, okay, in fictional stories.
Yeah, like movies and books and short stories are almost never from the point of view of the person who is cheating. It's
Mm-hmm.
always from the point of view of the person who got cheated on.
Right.
And people always see themselves as whoever is the main character.
It's interesting because I guess like I can see that in media. It's like I don't want to get so specific into it, but there's like a discourse I saw. There's always discourse happening, always, where it feels like, well, first of all, I think people put too much of their business online. But
Yeah.
besides that, I do think that when people bring their business online, a lot of people, we're now at a point where we either like wait for the other half of the story, and some people, no, most people don't wait till the other half comes out to render judgment. But it's like you hear these real people, and people wait for the person that they either lived or see themselves as being, which I might go back to that main character thing. And that's the thing, like that's the perspective they're going to come at. But then there's also this group think that happens too, that I find very interesting, because like that was something about the comment section of some of these like Reddit videos that's really, it, I mean, truly, I'm doing some real social listening here, where it's just you see the amount of people like kind of decide what their opinion is based on what gets the most upvotes
Oh,
or
yeah.
what they think is the most popular opinion, and then they just kind of adopt that, which I found was very interesting, because in this weird like declaration of independence of cyberspace that I read, that was something else that he talked about, was he really saw the internet as being this space that was free from groupthink.
Which is fascinating in terms of how much it is very much just a facilitator of groupthink.
Exactly. How was he so wrong?
I mean, in the
Like
early days of the
it was,
internet, it was just so different because it was all internet forums that were all so niche and you really had to hunt and find them. So like and there was like just so for every single thing you could think of there was a very niche internet forum with like a dedicated community that like was really just a group of people that became friends and all knew each other. And but now
mm,
everything is on like three or four social media apps and everyone is on them, and there's no real privacy to just have like a private conversation with your group. It's all everyone is in one group, which is incredibly
yeah.
frustrating.
It's so weird because it really is such like a paradox of it's nothing and everything at the same time, where like there's all these different like niche communities that exist, but then there's overarching communities. I mean, it's sort of like the way that like my For You page is so different than yours. Um, and then even sometimes I see peaks of things of these people with millions of followers, but I have no idea who they are, and I don't know what they do. And I think it kind of goes back to that fairy, like what I said about fairy tales and like Frankenstein, where it's crazy, but there are some people have no idea, like in the world of Frankenstein, this thing has happened, this crazy tale, and no one fucking knows about it. And so I do think it's interesting that the internet has grown to a space where it is sort of like that again. Because I do think there's parts of it that are very regulated, but there are also parts of it that aren't.
I feel like the it's regulated by robots and AI and algorithm, which doesn't create any real regulation, if that makes sense, because it's not really like a person overseeing it with nuance and maturity. It's a robot making decisions based on the
Right.
data it's been fed. So all you have to do is learn how to get around the robot, which is pretty easy.
And then that's just like we're one step away from dead internet theory.
Yeah.
But like I don't know. I found that very interesting that I because I do see, I know that's like the Star Trek thing of space, the final frontier, but I do think that the internet is sort of the final frontier
Yeah.
for us because at least like every day, like I guess I'll say like everyday Americans, because there's not really parts of the US that are like that anymore. You can travel to places, but like, you know, having a passport is such a privilege and like
Definitely.
can be really hard to get and it's so expensive, and so we have this thing that you this whole other world that you can access, like we have it in our pocket now. And it's so interesting, this thought that it was sort of started with this idea of like this is going to be the one place that we can go and we can be free. And it is sort of like that, but it's also very cruel in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think the internet empowers a lot of people that previously did not have the power to speak out and make their experiences known. At the same time, it
Mm-hmm.
empowers other people to respond to those outcries in negative ways, but it also, in in that it gives us the power to know each other, it gives government entities and those in power who wish to oppress us the power to surveil us.
I guess in a weird way, like having a platform and like all of that. I mean, it goes back to that Halsey quote that I was talking to you about earlier this week, where it was like she said there are young men who want to have power, so that some young men, I don't want to put words in her mouth, that like want power to hurt others, and then there are young women who want power to protect themselves so they can't be abused again. And I do see an element of that when you look at like who's popular online, who has a platform, how they use their platform. Um, the people that they bring with them when they see success, or the people that they leave behind. It is really interesting because I was just thinking about this because I was watching videos from like a creator that followed for a really long time, and I feel like she doesn't post as much anymore, and that's kind of what happens is they hit a certain level of fame, so they don't, or like success, so they don't have to like just make things to get in the algorithm. They can just make what they want. It just made me think about all those people who like they get an audience and then they move to LA and then they just become very different people, or I don't know, maybe that's just who they always were. And the internet, especially like I feel like social media fame really has become a bit of a magnet for that. So maybe some of those responses, like people being really intense in the comments, is a response where it's like this level of power and fame that feels within your grasp, where it feels like, oh, I could do that. I could do what so and so does. I could say what they say. I could also use my platform this way, where it feels like it's so close but so far away. And it's like an immediate fix to whatever issue is happening in your life.
Yeah, everyone feels so powerless right now, and the internet has been a
Mm-hmm.
way for so many to try and reclaim that power by taking power away from others.
I don't know. It's really interesting. I feel like a lot of people don't think very, and I understand why you wouldn't, because there's like so much online. Like I haven't really thought about like intentionally about the way that I use my internet access. and the things that I do online, I don't really think about it until I start hearing about like the way that Gen Alpha uses the internet, or rather the way that they don't like quite like they know how to use apps, but they don't fully understand how to use the internet.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me.
And that was very fascinating, and that was really what like changed my view and like how I use resources and how I use the internet as a resource and like what I consume, because that's crazy. I guess that's just the real life consequence of like iPad babies or whatever.
Yeah.
Are they iPad babies or iPad kids?
I think
I
they're
forget what the term is.
both. I don't know the exact term, but yeah, it's iPads that just get shoved in front of their faces.
Yeah, because like they have Chromebooks and all that, but like for the most part, I know a lot of schools use tablets.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess like I don't know. I don't know. I don't really know what the situation is in public schools nowadays. Like I'm so far removed from high school at this point. You know, my real like frame of reference that I remember is like college, and that's a whole other beast. But like, you know, I don't have young kids. I've never raised a young child, so I don't know what that deal is, but it is really interesting that, you know, we innovated internet and made it so simple that you could use apps, but now people don't know anything beyond the app. And there's crazy shit. Like I went on Google for 5 minutes and I found this weird Declaration of Independence of cyberspace.
Oh yeah, the other day I found like I was doing research on Gothic novels and I found this one guy's blog that does these like deep dive research articles into all these old Gothic stories, and I was like, this is such a treasure trove of information. This is just right here.
I don't know what Substack is. I've heard people refer to
It's
it.
a newsletter. It's basically, yeah, it's if you have a Substack, that's how you can send us a newsletter to people, but it's also kind of like a blogging site.
Okay, that's what I thought it was. I just noticed that, like, and I thought that was really interesting because it feels like
We're returning.
people send you to their subs. Yeah, we're returning, but there's still like the, you know, you come from one place.
Hmm.
And like I get it. Like I use YouTube and TikTok, you know, as we're recording this is like pre-January 2025, so who knows like what that access is going to look like.
Yeah.
But like I use TikTok as a resource for recipes, for like nail art, for like interior designing, because I find the Instagram algorithm to be really
Same.
annoying, and Pinterest gets on my nerves
I try to keep my
sometimes.
Instagram. Yeah. I mean, TikTok is such, especially with the fall of Twitter, because I found Twitter was originally the way a lot of people would use it to like speak out about um, experiences they were having as a group. And
Right.
then Twitter fell, and now it's kind of shifted to TikTok. So I'm kind of like with TikTok going, where will the masses go when they need to outcry?
That's a good question. And I really think only time will tell. I mean, we'll see, because I don't know. I feel like a lot of people are just going to get VPNs. But then I don't know what that crackdown would look like.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just interesting. It just got me thinking about this organic, out of control growth, you know, circa arcane style that we're seeing. And I just thought that was interesting, that I think that was the intention, but um, I don't know. I'm sure there's like systemic roots for why we become this way and why we like fall victim to groupthink. But it is, I guess to summarize, it's pissing me off
It's,
that I listened
yeah.
to my fun little Reddit story. This is why I brought this all up. I've read the article. I feel like I did the intellectual thing. So now I can just say, y'all need to learn to take or leave advice, because I find some of these people advice and their points of view very interesting, and I like to think, oh, maybe you did lead like a different kind of life, and maybe you did do like make a few of these mistakes in your past. That's really interesting, and I like hearing that stuff. And the more you complain, the more they don't let those people come on the Reddit stories. And I'm pissed. I'm so pissed. There's one guy who gave a really interesting opinion. I thought he was very funny and everyone hated him and they didn't bring him back.
Oh.
And he like came back once, but like every time like people got pissed about an opinion, I noticed that they would bring back like a popular person that everyone really likes and that they know will agree with them. And I'm just like, no, because if everybody's saying the same thing, and if you're, first of all, I'm also going to say, I think Reddit is full of thought experiments of like people doing little creative writing. Like, Am I the Asshole is just a creative writing prompt.
They used to do that on Tumblr, and then people discovered all the stories on Tumblr were fake, and now they've just moved to Reddit.
Yeah. But, like, the thing about Reddit, too, is I feel like a lot of people really lack perspective and they don't understand that not only is it a thought experiment, but a lot of times it's, like, an angry dude who makes a woman the, like, antagonist of the story. But anyway, I'll digress. It just pisses me off because I don't want to go and hear... Like, when I listen to these, they read what the top comments have been on the post to gauge, like, if they agreed with everybody on Reddit or if they didn't. But a lot of times what they say is not exactly what the response was on Reddit. Mm-hmm. And that's why I like it. Because so many people, they'll just do an AI voice and read out the stupid story. And I know how I feel about the outrage bait. I get outraged. Yeah. That's why they wrote it.
Yeah.
But I want to hear what these people think. Because, like, there's one person on that channel. Her name is Amanda. And she's lived a crazy fucking life. Like, she lived on Hilton Head Island for, like, 9 months. She was just a bartender and, like, rode her bike. And that was just her life. And the whole thing about her, she doesn't know too much about the internet because she wasn't online. She was out living life. That's a person I want to hear from. Because, sorry to say, if you're writing on Reddit, you probably don't have the life experience of this woman. So you probably don't know that cheating might be more common than you think it is. Or that some of your friends might be a little more okay with it than you think they are. And it's an interesting conversation starter. But, like, people have different degrees of friends. Mm-hmm. There's some people you're like, oh, that's so-and-so. She's messy as fuck. But you know what? Sometimes those people are so fun to have in the friend group. And you just get, like, a little peek into a different person. Okay? I'll say it. There's a social study element that you people are missing. You're missing out on observing.
Everyone needs a Carrie Bradshaw in their life.
Yes. So what? You're just going to go through and
that one person that's just making terrible decisions, and you hold their hand and you say, "You need to get it together," and then you go home and you feel good about yourself.
And that's how it goes, because otherwise, like, you're just going to spend your life in an echo chamber with people who make all the right steps. No. Yeah. You need people to, like, make missteps. That's being human. Like, to be human is to err. Or whatever that quote is. Like, this is having a human experience. And I'm not saying, like, go out and cheat on your boyfriend. Because I don't think that I don't know that that's inherent.
We here at Are You Seeing This do not in any way, shape, or form approve of cheating. That is bad. Do not do it.
Like, I'm not saying, like, you need to live your life. Go cheat on him, girl. That's not what I'm saying. Like, I don't think cheating is good. What I'm saying is I can understand being in the right situation with the right mix of emotions and doing something stupid. And what I think is interesting from that is I feel like all of us can really relate to that pit in your stomach you get when you realize that you've done something wrong, or you're gonna have to go, like, atone for your sins, or, like, you're gonna have to go mend something. Like, we can all relate to that feeling, and I feel like we can all understand when people have hit that. And so, you know, I don't know. I feel like you can't make all the right decisions all the time.
Agreed.
It's okay to make mistakes. And I don't extend that to people who have, like, a secret racist Twitter, right?
No.
But, like...
but, like...
and that's why, like...
Life is not, you know, morality is not absolute... You can't apply absolute moralism to every single situation.
Right.
And every single person.
Because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. And you can consult the Bible and you can see what the texts say, but just as the Bible has one set of rules, the Quran has another set of rules. And Judaism has some thoughts as well. Like, we can't just, and that's the whole point, is that people grew up around different things, had different things present in their life that make certain issues feel bigger to them. And I think that's interesting, because otherwise, all you Redditors are going to end up just talking to other Redditors from the burbs who had the exact same experience as you in high school, where you're like, 15-year-old girlfriend went off and kissed someone else and didn't think your relationship was a big deal. Now women have hurt you. Sorry.
Very specific example, but I get the gist of what you're saying.
If you dated men, you would know that there's always a high school relationship that made them doubt women, and that they've never recovered from it.
Okay, good to know. But yeah, I get what you're saying. We definitely need to consider all perspectives, and we need to stop shutting ourselves away in echo chambers.
There tends to be an inciting... Right, but I just want to correct myself and say I apologize to the men out there who might be fans, however few of you there are.
We need all the fans, so please stick around. Man. If we need to tell you you're special,
I will...
we will tell you you're special.
I will say there is a specific type of man that had the high school inciting incident.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I'll put it. There's a specific type of man who's learned not to trust women from high school. But really, if you get into it, it's a relationship with their mom. But, like, we don't have to get into that.
That's another episode altogether.
But yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Is like, guys, stop ruining the comment section of my Reddit stories, okay? I'm just trying to read... I'm trying to run my errands, and occasionally I'm like, that's really interesting. I didn't know that about that person who randomly offered this up through this conversation. In the comments, y'all are like, I can't believe that this happened. I can't believe that she said this. I can't believe. Well, start believing, okay? And it's Christmas time.
That's Look the moral of this episode. Start believing.
Start believing. But that's all I got for you. That's all I've seen.
Yep. I think that's a good place to conclude the episode. I've enjoyed hearing from you, and I've done a lot on this baby blanket. I've enjoyed hearing from you
as well.
Yeah. How are your nails?
That's exciting. I finished my right hand, and I'm working on my left hand because I paused a lot to talk with my hands, even though you can't see that.
That makes so much sense to me. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, anyways.
Thanks for chatting, friend.
Thanks for chatting.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. We don't have any other place you can look for us, so please just subscribe and tune in next time whenever we post next. Thank you. Please come back. Bye.
Yes, please come back, all two of you.